Under a scorching sun and relentless heat, Greek soldier Pheidippides started running from a battlefield in Marathon to the city of Athens. The whole population of Athens waited for the message he was carrying, and the lives of hundreds of millions of Athenians depended on him. Because the citizens of Athens were ordered to commit suicide if they lost the war to Persians. You see, around 500 BC, the Greek city-states were accumulating vast amounts of wealth because trade and commerce started booming in the region. While in the east, Persia, the military superpower, took notice of this. For some centuries, even before the Greek city-states rose to prominence, Persia had been the world's sole superpower. Due to its wealth and extraordinary military, the empire had maintained a dominance that no other empires at the time could match. But as cities like Athens and Sparta started gaining influence, the stature of the powerful empire was challenged for the very first time. Despite the odds stacked against them, Athens won against Persia. And the message Pheidippides carried brought much joy to the city of Athens and its citizens. China is set to overtake the US as the largest economy by the end of this decade, or at least by the beginning of the next. For a country like the US, which has remained to be the sole superpower for decades, this can be a tough pill to swallow. The last time the superpower faced a situation like this, it was involved in a 45-year-old Cold War, and the antagonists that time were the USSR. Every time in the history of our civilization when an established order set by an established superpower has been disrupted or challenged by an upcoming superpower, the results have been disastrous. It could be the Battle of Carchemish between Babylon and Egypt, or the above-mentioned Greco-Persian War. This will make anyone question if we will be witnessing another such encounter, and if something like this does transpire, what will be the consequences? Chapter 1: An Established World Order. After World War II, many superpowers at the time lost their influence. Europe was especially hard hit because the continent was the main theater for the war. Countries like England, France, and Spain, who had colonized and dominated many African, Asian, and South American countries, witnessed a downfall in their supremacy. By the middle of the century, only two superpowers remained: the US and the USSR. But after the fall of the USSR in 1991, US had remained to be the sole superpower for almost 3 decades. The country has dominated all fields including military, science, and culture. It had so much influence over world trade that it remained to be the center for world business and commerce as well. In fact, if the country hadn't promoted the idea of free market and a global village, the world simply wouldn't be as interconnected as it is today. It was even predicted that the US would be upgraded to the status of hyperpower within the end of the century. But before that could be realized, the US is losing its dominance in many areas. For instance, China has now overtaken the US in many economic fronts, including economic resources and diplomatic influences. And this hasn't gone unnoticed by the US, Western powers, and to some extent by the NATO nations as well. Chapter 2: Rise of a Nation Giant. While the West was vying for dominance in Europe, China, despite its impressive population and awe-inspiring demographics, had closed itself to the rest of the world under the leadership of Mao Zedong. Its manufacturing industries were outdated, its agricultural industry was not producing enough food to feed the large population, and almost 80% of the population was living in extreme poverty. While China wanted to replicate the success of its northern neighbor, its policies and leadership posed a huge challenge to the country's growth. There was little to no foreign investment, it wasn't attracting the world talents, and neither was it producing any of its own. And in terms of military, the Chinese equipment and machinery was dwarfed by that of USSR and US. But in 1978, inspired by the growth of Asian tiger economies like Japan, Taiwan, Singapore, and other countries, China started opening up its economy. Led by Deng Xiaoping, the CCP started setting up special economic zones where companies from outside China could invest and in return could reap benefits of the cheap labor that China provided. This proved to be a phenomenal success. China went from being a $200 million economy in 1978 to a $12 trillion economy. And according to the CCP, extreme poverty has already been eradicated in the country. Chapter 3: The Inevitable Clash. When Europe, North America, and some developed countries of Asia like Japan and South Korea started investing in China, the leaders of these countries had assumed that over time, Chinese leaders and Chinese Communist Party would embrace democracy and open up its economy to the Western idea of a free market. Although CCP did ease some of its restrictions on international trade and even opened up stock markets, something that would have been unthinkable during the rule of Mao Zedong, for the most part it has stayed true to its founding principles. Western and even Asian democracies see this as a threat to their idea of an elected leadership. These differences in ideologies aren't just political, they are also social and economical. China has remained to be a single-party country. Its leader is still closer to a dictator than he is to an elected head of a state. CCP continues to crack down on minorities and on cities like Hong Kong. For the world democracies, the fact that a ruling party of a country could take such actions without any internal opposition is unthinkable. Much like Persia couldn't handle the fact that there was a more decentralized form of administration thriving in the West, world democracies now feel like a more authoritarian administration is gaining influence. Chapter 4: Possible Conflict. For some years now, the economic and military relations between China and US have been deteriorating. The US and China trade war that was initiated during the Trump administration brought an irreversible damage to the bilateral trade between the two countries. While the US initiated the trade dispute by increasing tariffs on imports from China, China, for its part, was quick to react by increasing tariffs on US imports. The back and forth continued until recently when both countries have come to an understanding. But like I mentioned, the damage has already been done. And that damage is growing each day. What the trade war started, COVID-19 pandemic, continued and added more fuel. So, who won the trade war? Well, neither. While the conflict did create some jobs, it also took away many. The gains made by the trade war is nothing compared to the billions of dollars worth of economic damage that both sides have had to bear. But the economic actions and the results are much less scary compared to the security and military conflicts that the two superpowers are involved in. The South China Sea, China's man-made islands and military bases, Taiwan, and more recently AUKUS have all caused great distress within the region. Chapter 5: South China Sea. In 2014, China started building artificial islands in the South China Sea. This raised alarm for countries situated in the region. Smaller countries including Vietnam, Philippines, and Taiwan were left surprised by this action. These countries took the issue to the international peacekeeping organizations, and this time even the US and NATO felt like they had to take action. One of the main reasons was because if China gains complete access over the marginal sea, then the US loses strategic advantage in the region. The story is similar to Taiwan conflict as well. If China succeeds in occupying Taiwan, then the US loses influence over a huge chunk of Pacific Ocean. Both the countries are vying for military dominance in the region. While China is sending warships and fighter jets to patrol the region, NATO is sending aircraft carriers and naval ships. But here's the problem. One failed test, one misguided missile, one accident or even a stray bullet can cause catastrophic reactions. No one wants the two superpowers to go to war. If that happens, then what will follow may as well result in the end of human civilization as we know it. Every single human, regardless of nationality, race, gender, age, everyone will be affected. There is no denying that the tensions in South China Sea is worsening. What we are witnessing now is eerily similar to the instances in history that led to a clash of historic superpowers. The question is, have our leaders learned their lessons? Have we learned our lessons? Will we be able to set an example to the future generations by solving this problem through dialogue? Or will we give them a damaged and wounded world filled with hatred? It's for us to decide. Hey guys, I know I haven't uploaded in a long time and I apologize for that. There was a lot going on and I couldn't concentrate on the videos. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, consider liking and sharing the video. Thank you guys for your patience, and again, I apologize for the MIA, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.